Welcome back at MX-5 Info. In this video I will show you all the options you can use to compose the perfect cruise control system for your Miata. I've installed cruise control on dozens of NA, NB and NC Miatas. Initially I always used the original systems, but more recently I've also started using parts from other Mazda models to arrive at a better solution. I will share what I've learned by answering 10 frequently asked questions. So let's go. On the Miata, two different methods have been used for cruise control. The NA and NB use a dedicated cruise control module combined with a vacuum assisted actuator and a physical throttle cable. The NC and ND have cruise control systems in the ECU to manage an electronic throttle body. The first version of the Mazda 6 has a cruise control module and actuator in one that uses an electric motor to pull the cable. The Mazda 6 system is an alternative for the original system of the NA and NB generation of cars that did not get cruise control from the factory. This also is an opportunity for the right-hand drive versions, the Mazda Speed Miata and Miatas with a non-stock engine. Cruise control on the NC and ND Miata is operated using switches on the steering wheel. Unfortunately, that is not feasible on the NA Miata. The NB Miata, however, can either use the cruise control switches from the Mazda Protégé or use a steering wheel from some other Mazda models. The wires for switches and the illumination on the steering wheel are connected to the car via the clock spring. After upgrading the clock spring on the NB, the steering wheel and airbag from the NC Miata, the Mazda 6, the CX-7 or the RX-8 can be used. A light in the cruise main switch of the NA and NB Miata shows when the module is powered. For the NC and ND Miata, this is shown in the speedometer. On the NA Miata there is no cruise indicator informing you that the system is managing the speed of the car, but you could make one. The North American NB Miata has a cruise indicator in the instrument cluster. In other regions you could repurpose an unused indicator instead, like the overdrive off or hold indicator. Installing an original cruise lens or a DIY version of it is also an option. On the NC Miata, Mazda used yellow and green to indicate the cruise control status, similar to the RX-8 and other models. We used a 3D printed bulb holder and an RGB LED to produce green light or yellow light by mixing red and green. The red and green at the top of this diagram represents the common cathode RGB LED. The alternative lens has transparent text and required a different approach. In this case we used two separate LEDs to avoid mixing colors. This also changed the wiring diagram. The cruise main switch from the NA Miata is the best candidate, since it has two momentary switches on board and always returns to the center position. The on position can be used as on-off toggle and the off position as cancel button to pause cruise control operation. The NB1 main cruise control switch is a latching switch, but we need a momentary switch. The NB2 main switch is also a latching switch, but can be modified into a momentary switch for the on-off function by removing the part in the circle. The actuator on the NA and NB Miata have a fixed location, but can only be used on the left-hand drive versions. The Mazda 6 actuator fits nicely in the location reserved for the NB actuator, next to the clutch master cylinder. I'm using a custom bracket to mount it in that location, but you may find a good location elsewhere. For inspiration, I'm sharing some pictures of other installations. The last one is on a Daihatsu Materia that has a Mazda compatible vehicle speed signal. The actuator cable of the original system goes through the firewall to this gas pedal mechanism. On the Mazda 6, the actuator cable has a direct line to the throttle body. That is the easiest method. You can use, modify or replace the bracket on the engine to host the Mazda 6 actuator cable. I'm using a custom replacement bracket, so I can use the original cable. On the NB with the Jaguar engine, I had to use the original method and made a custom actuator cable for it. On this right-hand drive car, we see a short custom cable and a custom bracket on the actuator. Near the throttle body, the cables are clamped together with wire rope clips like these. The cruise control modules of the NA and NB solution are mounted under the dashboard and only have 4 of the 13 wires going through the firewall to the engine bay. This is the Mazda 6 wiring diagram I explained in detail in an earlier video. The actuator has 9 wires and I prefer to feed all of them through the firewall. If your actuator cable goes directly to the throttle body, you can use the hole in the firewall that is intended for the original actuator cable. You can reuse the rubber that covered the hole. The alternative route is to use one of the rubber grommets on either end of the firewall. I managed to put all wires through the hole that is also used for the Bowden cable of the hood release. The OEM system uses this BR70 switch. I would only use it on cars that have the original cruise control wiring harness with the 2 separate connectors. I prefer this round GM brake switch. The connector is very common on Mazda models and is plugged in at the top. The alternative is the square version. It uses the same connector but plugs in on the side, which I find less convenient. The square switch might be cheaper, but I also heard they are less reliable. On a US spec NA Miata, I would install the original system because all or most of the wiring would already be available. On any other version, I would install the Mazda 6 cruise control system since it offers more functionality, reliability and better parts availability. On an NA, I would try to stay as close to the OEM look as possible and at least use the NA cruise main switch. If you're not interested in audio switches on the steering wheel, go for the Protégé cruise control switches. Personally, I like audio switches on the steering wheel and would use the cruise switches on the wiper lever. If I were to choose one of the other steering wheels, it would be the Mazda 6 steering wheel. It seems to blend in a bit better than the NC Miata steering wheel and airbag. Please let me know if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already, and leave your questions and remarks in the comment section below. There's also a dedicated playlist for all the videos that are related to the Mazda 6, and you will find detailed instructions in there on what to do if you want to install this system on your own car. Thanks for watching MX-5 Info, and until next time.